Number 10. The endless fog zones. The endless fog zones are, in the taxonomy of dark continent dangers, among the most deceptive because they begin as something that seems manageable. Fog is a familiar phenomenon. Humans have navigated fog for as long as they have navigated anything. It reduces visibility, distorts sound, complicates movement. These are problems that can be addressed with instruments, with rope lines, with careful coordination between members of a group. An experienced expedition team, encountering fog in the human world, would know exactly how to proceed. The fog of the dark continent is not that fog. It is not a meteorological phenomenon that can be compensated for with the right tools. It is an environment, a total, encompassing sensory condition that affects not just what you can see and hear, but how your mind processes what it is experiencing. The disorientation it produces is not the simple confusion of reduced information. It is something closer to dissolution. Travelers who have entered and returned from the fog zones, a vanishingly small number, describe a progressive erosion of the cognitive structures that normally organize experience into coherence. Time becomes unreliable first. Hours feel like minutes, or the reverse, with no discernible pattern. Then direction. The body's sense of orientation, the subtle internal compass that tells you which way you came from and which way you're going, simply stops working. Not inaccurately, it stops working entirely, providing no signal at all. Then, in the cases that went furthest, identity itself begins to destabilize. Survivors describe moments of genuine uncertainty about who they were. Not confusion about their location or their objectives, but uncertainty about the continuous self that normally persists beneath all experience. The fog does not attack this. It simply removes, gradually and without apparent mechanism, the environmental conditions that normally sustain it. Number 9. Predatory forest ecosystems. The concept of a predatory forest requires careful unpacking, because the human intuition about forests, even dangerous ones, is that the danger comes from things within the forest. The forest itself is context. It is the stage on which threats operate. Trees are obstacles or shelter. The ground is terrain to be navigated. Undergrowth is cover. In the human world, no matter how hostile a forest environment might be, the environment itself is neutral. The dark continent's forest ecosystems are not neutral. Every layer of the forest environment in certain regions of the dark continent functions as an active participant in predation. This is not metaphor. Trees in these regions have developed mechanisms for consuming organic matter that comes into sustained contact with them, not through passive absorption, as carnivorous plants in the human world operate, but through active response. Bark texture changes on contact with flesh. Sap composition shifts. The tree participates in the digestion of what touches it. Vines exhibit constriction behavior that responds to detected movement and body heat. The ground in certain areas has a subsurface structure that responds to weight distribution in ways that suggest sensory function. Areas that appear stable become unstable in direct response to the presence of a living creature. But the feature of these forest ecosystems that elevates them from merely dangerous to categorically unprecedented is the coordination. Individual organisms in the human world can be dangerous. Ecosystems in the human world can be hostile, but they do not coordinate in real time. The predatory forests of the dark continent appear to. Number 8. The lake of unseen life. Water in the human world is legible. You can test it. You can filter it. You can, with sufficient technology, analyze its contents down to the molecular level and determine whether it is safe to drink, safe to touch, safe to cross. This legibility is so fundamental to human survival strategy that we rarely think about it consciously. The assumption that water can be assessed, that its dangers, if any, can be identified and addressed, underlies enormous portions of how expeditions plan and operate. The lake of unseen life is water that cannot be assessed. Not because the technology is insufficient, though current technology is certainly insufficient, but because the organisms it contains operate outside the biological frameworks that human science uses to identify and categorize life. They are not visible under optical magnification because they do not interact with light in the ways that make optical magnification useful. They cannot be detected by chemical means because their chemistry does not correspond to the chemical signatures that detection is calibrated to find. They are not absent. They are present in enormous density, but they are present in a way that the entire apparatus of human biological science has no method for engaging. Number 7. The zone of infinite predation. The food chain is one of humanity's most fundamental frameworks for understanding ecosystems. At the base, organisms that produce energy from non-living sources. Above them, consumers of various levels, each dependent on the level below. At the apex, predators with no natural enemies, organisms that exist, in ecological terms, as the final answer to the question of what eats what. This hierarchy is not arbitrary. It emerges from the pressures of evolution over vast timescales, and it creates the relative stability that makes complex ecosystems possible. Apex predators regulate populations. Mid-level consumers maintain the balance between primary producers and the organisms above them. The chain, for all its violence, is a system of mutual constraint. Number 6. The planes of silent extinction. The planes of silent extinction present a challenge to human threat assessment that is, in some ways, more fundamental than any physical danger. The plains appear empty, vast, open, extending to every horizon without feature or movement. No vegetation of significance. No visible fauna. No sound beyond what the wind produces passing over featureless terrain. Every instrument an expedition might use to detect life, thermal, acoustic, chemical, seismic, returns nothing. The plains register, by every available measure, as uninhabited. They are not uninhabited. Whatever exists in the plains of silent extinction simply exists in a way that human detection technology cannot register. This is not stealth in the conventional sense, the deliberate concealment of a presence that would otherwise be detectable. It is, as far as can be determined from the available evidence, a form of existence that does not produce the signatures that detection is designed to find. Life, or something that functions as life, that does not emit heat in detectable ranges. That does not produce chemical traces. That does not displace air in ways that acoustic sensors pick up. That is simply, by the standards of human measurement, not there until it is. People who cross the plains disappear. This is the entirety of the empirical record, stated plainly. They enter the plains. They do not emerge. There is no evidence of struggle at the point of disappearance. No physical disturbance of the terrain, no remains, no equipment left behind. Whatever happens to them happens without the kind of resistance that leaves a trace. The most disturbing interpretation of this, and also the most accurate given the available evidence, is that the process by which humans are removed in the plains does not require them to struggle against it. It is not a process they can resist. It may not be a process they are even aware of while it is occurring. Number 5. The territory of Zobae disease. Among the 5 known calamities that have been brought back from the Dark Continent, each one, catastrophic enough to have nearly ended the expeditions that encountered them, Zobae disease, occupies a particular position of horror, not because of what it does to the body, under Zobae's influence, remains functional, remains, in fact, more than functional, it becomes, in certain, measurable physical respects, enhanced. Wounds heal faster than normal. Physical decay slows. The normal processes of biological deterioration that govern all organic life on some level cease to apply in the way they once did. Zobae disease, paradoxically, extends life. What it removes is everything that makes extended life meaningful. The mind, under Zobae's influence, undergoes a progressive restructuring that begins with the erosion of higher cognitive functions. Abstract reasoning, long-term planning, the capacity to hold multiple competing considerations, simultaneously, and ends, in fully advanced cases, with the elimination of anything that could be described as a self. Victims in the late stages of Zobae retain basic sensory processing and motor function. They move. They respond to stimuli. They are, in the biological sense, alive. They are not, in any sense that the people who knew them would recognize, there. The particularly insidious quality of Zobae's progression is that it is slow enough to be witnessed from the inside for a significant portion of its course. Victims in early and middle stages are aware of what is happening to them. They can describe the process, the gradual dimming of the interior life, the increasing difficulty of the cognitive tasks that once came easily, the sense of the self becoming less solid, less defined, less reliable as a continuous entity. They know what is coming. They can see it, approaching, and they cannot stop it, and they cannot die to escape it, and eventually, the part of them that could articulate this awareness is gone too, and what remains is simply a body, persisting indefinitely in a world it can no longer meaningfully experience. Number 4. The domain of Bion. Bion is classified as a calamity, one of the 5 beings or phenomena of the dark continent that humanity has directly encountered and been catastrophically unable to address. The classification is both accurate and insufficient. Calamity implies an event, something that occurs and then ends. Bion is not an event. It is a permanent condition of the region. It inhabits a presence so total and so incomprehensible that the region cannot be usefully described apart from the fact of Bion's existence within it. What is known about Bion is, by the standards of what researchers would want to know, almost nothing. It is large. It is capable of producing effects at distances that exceed any reasonable definition of a threat radius. It does not, as far as can be determined, have intentions in the way that even the most alien organisms are typically understood to have intentions. It does not hunt and does not defend territory in recognizable ways, does not respond to stimuli in patterns that suggest goal-directed behavior. What it does is exist, and the existence is itself enough to make the surrounding region effectively uninhabitable for any organism that has not evolved in direct relationship with it. The expeditions that have encountered Bion have not returned with detailed observational data. They, too, have returned. The survivors have returned with 2 consistent pieces of information. First, that Bion is present, and that its presence is immediately and unmistakably apparent upon entering the domain. Number 3. The territory of Pap. If Bion represents force in its most incomprehensible form, Pap represents something, in some ways, more disturbing, sophisticated, responsive, almost communicative danger. Pap is classified as a calamity, but its method of operation is so unlike conventional threat behavior that the classification feels like an understatement and a misdirection simultaneously. Pap does not attack. Pap offers. And what it offers is, in every documented case, precisely what the person encountering it most deeply wants. The mechanism by which Pap assesses and responds to individual desire is not understood. There is no sensory organ that has been identified, no communication protocol that has been decoded, no physical process that has been observed that accounts for the specificity of what Pap provides. What is understood is the outcome. People who encounter Pap in its territory are presented with fulfillment, not crude approximations of their desires, but accurate, detailed, experientially convincing fulfillment. The thing they want most is given to them, or is made to appear to be given to them, in a form that is indistinguishable to the person experiencing it from the real thing. The dependency that results is absolute and almost instantaneous. The human brain, receiving the signal of fundamental desire fulfilled, has no framework for questioning the source of that fulfillment. The experience of wanting something and having it is, neurologically, the most rewarding state available. Pap provides this state continuously. The result is that victims stop wanting to leave. Not because they are physically restrained, they are not, but because the state they are in is the state they want to be in, and nothing in human cognition reliably overrides that. The very mechanisms that would motivate escape, discomfort, fear, the drive to address unmet needs have been removed by the fulfillment of those needs. Number 2. The domain of AI. AI is the calamity that most directly mirrors the Nanaka phenomenon in the human world, the wish-granting entity that inhabits Aluka Zoldyck, which readers of Hunter x Hunter will already understand represents an ability of extraordinary danger. AI operates on similar principles, but at a scale, and with a mechanism that makes the Nanaka comparison feel inadequate. AI grants wishes. This is not metaphorical. It is the most accurate description available of what AI does. You encounter AI. You have a desire. I fulfills it. The cost structure of AI's wish granting is where the domain's lethality becomes apparent. Every wish granted by AI is balanced by a cost that is always proportional to the depth of the desire fulfilled, and is never paid by the person whose desire was fulfilled. The cost is distributed to people connected to the wisher, to people in proximity, to people who have no relationship to the wisher whatsoever. The balance AI requires is not moral. It does not punish selfishness or reward selflessness. It simply balances. You receive something. The equivalent is removed from the world, from wherever and whoever is most convenient for the removal to occur. The domain of AI is therefore dangerous, not primarily to the people who enter it. It is dangerous to everyone connected to anyone who enters it. A single person making a single wish in AI's domain can initiate a cascade of consequences that reaches people who had no knowledge of the domain's existence, who made no choices that brought them into contact with it, who are simply the arithmetic that AI uses to close the equation. The domain does not respect consent. It does not recognize the distinction between the person who sought the wish and the people who pay for it. This is the darkest possible form of power, power that fulfills desire at the expense of the uninvolved. And it is dark not because of malice. AI does not appear to experience anything that could be described as malice, but because it is simply the mechanism. Desire is fulfilled. Balance is maintained. The distinction between who deserves what is not a variable in the calculation. In this way, the domain of AI is the dark continent's most precise statement about what human wanting scaled to. Its absolute extreme actually costs. Number 1. The unknown. The deadliest place in the dark continent is not a specific location. It is not a territory with coordinates, or a region with a name. It is the vast, unmapped, unencountered remainder, everything that no human expedition has yet reached, described, or survived to report on. The unknown is not a poetic designation. It is the most accurate term available for the majority of the dark continent's geography, which exists beyond the edge of even the fragmentary knowledge that the described locations represent. What humanity knows about the dark continent, the fog zones, the predatory forests, the lake, the plains, the calamities was acquired at enormous cost. Each piece of information represents an expedition that did not fully succeed, survivors who were permanently changed by what they experienced, and a body of knowledge so incomplete that experts hesitate to describe it as knowledge at all. It is, more accurately, a collection of survival reports and trauma records from which certain patterns have been extracted. The confidence interval on any assertion about the dark continent is so wide as to make most assertions essentially meaningless, and this is the knowledge gathered from the margins, from the areas closest to the boundary between the known world and the dark continent, where the most accessible regions themselves, catastrophically dangerous, happen to be. The dark continent extends far beyond these margins. It extends into regions that no human being has entered and returned from, into ecosystems that have had no contact with human life at any point in their development, into phenomena that exist without any analog in human experience, and therefore without any existing human framework for understanding them. What the unknown contains is, by definition, impossible to state. But the principle that the known contains is, margins are already capable of defeating humanity, with such consistency suggests a direction for extrapolation that is not encouraging. The unknown is the deadliest place in the dark continent because it is the place where even the inadequate preparation that the known calamities allow for is impossible. You cannot prepare for Bion, because Bion is incomprehensible. But at least you know Bion exists. You cannot prepare for the unknown because you do not know what it contains. Every expedition into the known dark continent is at least informed by the knowledge that what it is encountering exists. Every expedition into the unknown, every hypothetical future expedition that pushes beyond the margins would be encountering its threats without any prior record, any established name, any documented survivor. Account, pure ignorance. In a world where knowledge provides almost no protection, ignorance is something worse. The Dark Continent is not just a setting in Hunter x Hunter. It is an argument. It is Togashi, making a sustained case across the arc that introduces it and the volumes that develop it for a specific understanding of what the universe actually is and what humanity's place within it actually amounts to. The argument is not comforting. It is not the argument that adventure anime usually make, the one where the world is large and dangerous but ultimately navigable by the sufficiently determined, the sufficiently skilled, the sufficiently connected. The Dark Continent makes a different argument. It argues that the world contains things that are not navigable, that there are categories of existence, categories of danger, categories of sheer otherness that fall outside the scope of what human capability can address.